Hello everyone and welcome to my channel True Stories. Let me give you a quick introduction to what my channel is all about. Well, I'll be telling stories that are real and at the same time doing some artwork, and I hope you guys will enjoy it. Firstly, I would like to thank Mr. Butalal Hamrani from Kuwait, who is a well-known journalist, for his approval to translate his stories in English. Most of the stories that I'll be sharing are translated from his YouTube channel, which is in Arabic. The link of this YouTube channel is given below in the description box. Our fourth story involves child assault, abuse, and is inappropriate for minors. And if you are sensitive to such tales, which can be a subject of disturbance, please do not continue listening. The title of today's story is Hawally Monster. The following is a true story which took place in Hawally Governorate in Kuwait. Firstly, we would like to cover what our journalist Abu Talal Hamrani went through personally while covering the story. This story took an enormous media coverage, but let me give you an idea behind the story and the happenings through events related to the same. Now let me tell you who was the offender. The offender was a male Egyptian. The first crime committed by Monster of Hawally was in Salmiya. The journalist received an information from an unknown person, or would say his source, that there were two children that have been assaulted. One was Egyptian and the other was from Lebanon. The ages were not more than 10 years. The journalist was the first one to know and cover the story. Assault at that time was a rare case. At first, the media didn't describe the offender as the Hawally Monster. After a few months, this journalist had to face difficulties and was literally worn out. And he had to face psychological crisis in his work and overall in his life. Even his relations with his friends from the Ministry of Interior was disturbed. Let me tell you why. After the first incident of assault in Salmiya, there was a second which occurred in Hawally. This time the victim was a girl. But she was a bit well aware of what she has seen. She paid attention on the face of the culprit and the other details. She also stated that the man was Egyptian. She knew him by his accent as she was an Egyptian too. The journalist who here wrote other article stating the relation between the crime that happened before months and the one which occurred in Hawally. He thought that there was a connection. Of course, he was again in huge pressure that how could he write such an article if he was really sure about. At that point, nothing really mattered because the criminal was not found yet. So for him, awareness was majorly important at that time. Now, why was the offender named as Monster of Hawally or Hawally Monster? This offender assaulted children only in and around the Hawally Governorate. Hawally is an area in Kuwait, and the areas that count into that governorate are Salmiya, Hawally, Jabriya. So the first two cases were in Salmiya, the next were in Hawally, and it actually happened near a street called Makatib Islamiyya. So what they thought was that this criminal was living around the same area. The identification marks or specifications given by the fourth victim matched the one given by the third. She referred that he was an Egyptian. He was of an average height, he was of a medium body, but there was a distinctive mark that the culprit had. One of his front teeth were missing. The police made sure that the information related to the case were not given out loud, keeping in mind that the fact and details, if published, will help the criminal to escape. Now, the journalist here, who was hardworking and was quick and wanted his work to be unique and distinctive, and it was his job without getting help from the other news agencies or his fellow journalists, He was able to get a complete report from his sources related to this case, and it also included the approximate drawing and the exact, almost 90% exact drawing of the criminal according to the description of the victim. He published the details and the topic in the newspaper, and it was a huge breaking news as people started reading this newspaper and the exclusive details. After these events, there were no cases at all, as if Monster of Hawally left the country. For about 5 to 6 months, the journalist, of course, had nothing associated with this case whatsoever. People stopped answering his calls or sharing any other news with him. He also stopped writing articles because he kept in mind that it could spread news and cause difficulties to his fellow security officers, which are in defense and in police. Even if there was a road accident, he rejected to cover it or write any other information on or publish any other news. His editor-in-chief was anxiously waiting for him to write a new article, but little did he know that the people made him feel the guilt. He couldn't write because he felt that he was guilty and he was in a bad mental state. He was going through a lot. He thought he could be the reason of the criminal escaping from the country, but like every other newspaper at that time, he was also covering the same news. The journalist was about to give up his job. It was his work. This is what he did. He asked his editor-in-chief to appoint him as an editor in investigation or social investigation. He started working from the very beginning into a new field. He felt that he has done enough for covering the world of crime stories. He was about to quit. At that specific point, he got a call. The unknown person or his source was talking about how encouraging he had been and how his stories were completely right and on spot. But the journalist also said him and explained him that right now, he's very hesitant to do anything after what he has been through. As I told you that after 6 months, the press had, of course, stopped writing and covering this topic, accepting the fact that the criminal has escaped or taken flight to his country. The case has been closed. That's what they thought. He started writing after the call and after the encouragement given by his source. He started writing 2 to 4 pages daily on this case, on the former records, and covering once again all the areas. There were 5 to 6 cases of assault, but the bitter truth is it was more than that. It was about 13 to 14 cases of some which the parents were afraid to actually go to the police or complain about it. As he started writing, he was fully aware of the negative response of his fellow reporters, but he kept strong and he knew that he's repeating and reminding people of an old story, but he also kept in mind that this was right at this specific time. At the same time, he thought that if the call from the source was false and all the details given by him were wrong, he would be doomed and his profession would come to an end. He also realized that people have been through a great horror, and the people still living in that area worry of this person returning or assaulting any other child. Now, after almost 3 days, he got a call again from his source telling him to immediately arrive to a specific location. In a flash, very rapidly, our journalist took a cameraman on his side. The cameraman here was an old Yemeni cameraman and a journalist. Now, the journalist told him to just go and get few shots as soon as the police arrives, and he was able to do so. But at the same time, the police realized that he was standing, so they immediately went to him. Our journalist was able to actually go and grab the camera from the man, and he ran. He started running as fast as he could. Part of him was filled with excitement that he can at least prove that he was right. When he reached and he gave a call to his source, the source said, "Let me notify you that you were right all along." The day the article was published was the day the criminal was conscious that he stopped attempting crime for 6 months. Actually, he said you did a favor by publishing this article, as the culprit, after reading this article, stopped. This criminal was an Egyptian, and all due respect to all the nationalities in this world, including the Egyptians, there are good and bad everywhere, and these are just a few. The criminal used to work in a gym, which was located in a basement. He worked as a trainer, a bodybuilding coach. Let me tell you how this person got arrested. Once a man who was an officer in the security forces brought his son along with him, who was a 12-year-old, because he was insisting his father to take him to the gym. Now the father got started with his regular exercising, and the son was actually hanging around with some trainers. As soon as his father was done, the father said, "What's wrong with you?" He said, "Dad, I think this guy was trying to touch me in an inappropriate way." The man, of course, lost control of himself and was about to hit the trainer, but after people getting involved to stop the fight, the monster got away. I would like to stop a bit to give my piece of advice to all the parents. Please, firstly, be there for your child at all times and spot signs of abuse, whether it's physical assault or emotional or medical. Make sure that your child is your first priority. Now the man went along, took his son. He was Kuwaiti, of Kuwaiti nationality, and he decided to give a call to one of his friends, who was an officer and a detective, a military detective officer. He told him the whole situation of the harassment. Now the officer started taking more information on the physical specifications of the trainer, and then that he realized that they were completely just like the one they were searching for the Hawally Monster. The father had no idea of the news, or he would have taken immediate action. Maybe it was the case of awareness. After taking all these information, the officer notified the detective officer of Hawally. The military detective officer called the detective officer of Hawally, a man with huge self-respect and very smart. When he told that when did this incident occur, he said it happened before hours. The same day, I would say. The detective asked the military officer to go to the gym straight away and arrest the man. And he also said him that I'm leaving for the airport. Yes, the detective officer of Hawally left for the airport. He knew that this person would try to escape after what had happened. When the investigator arrived at the gym, he didn't find the other trainers, or the management told him that he left his job. Then he started gathering other details, and the only thing he found was a picture of him with the other trainers. He immediately gave a call to the detective of Hawally, informing him that he was not there, and then the detective was 100% sure that he was there reaching for the airport to leave the country. The criminal was about to leave the country as soon as possible. And when he reached out to the airport, certainly the detective of Hawally knew that the flight which was leaving for Egypt was about to leave in less than 30 minutes. So he also knew that he couldn't reach in that time. He gave a call to his friend who was an airport detective officer. Luckily, he was at the airport. Now he gave him the flight number of the plane which was departing for Egypt, and he asked him to stop the flight, and that the criminal called Hawally Monster is in the plane and has to be arrested. The plane doors were closed and the flight was about to board. Under high security measure, the detective and the military detective got into the plane, and they checked the picture to make sure that this is the man they want. The moment they caught him, he confessed at the very moment. That's strange but true. He found that it was impossible to deny and it was all over. Hawally Monster was sentenced to death 4 times, 3 times to life imprisonment, and there were other cases which were incomplete because they didn't have enough proof. They could have given him sentenced him to death right away, but this case was discussed and gone through every specific detail. Therefore, there were also attempts where his family members made this case a public opinion case, but after all the proofs and evidence, there was not enough left. It was a clear case. The criminal himself, in his confessions, he also named other areas and children he assaulted, but the parents did not file any other cases. Therefore, he was guilty for all these awful crimes. All charges were proven against him. The number of victims were more than 16 children. Majority of them were Egyptians from Syria, Lebanon, and none were from Kuwait. The family members of the victims wished that they could make him pay for his crime with their bare hands. This case ended with the execution of Monster of Hawally. Later it was published in the newspapers as convicted serial child rapist known as Hawally Monster was executed. I would like to end this story with a quote by Clint Eastwood. Crimes against children are the most heinous crime. That, for me, would be a reason for capital punishment, because children are innocent and need the guidance of an adult society. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to subscribe.